So you're a beekeeper, right? Whether you've been doing this for years or you're just getting your feet wet, we all want the same thing, a huge honey harvest. But how do you actually make that happen? Well, let's dive in and break down the essential steps to make this your best season ever.
So, what's the secret sauce? How do you turn a pretty good season into an absolutely fantastic one? It really boils down to three big things: solid preparation, a smart strategy, and, of course, perfect timing. Let's walk through the entire playbook together.
You might think the honey season really kicks off when the flowers start to bloom. But the truth is, the path to a full honey super begins way before that. It all starts with prep, and honestly, the very first decision you make could be the most important one.
You've heard it a million times in real estate, right? Location, location, location. Well, guess what? It's exactly the same for your bees. You obviously need to find a spot with tons of flowers, but what's just as crucial is avoiding areas that are already packed with other apiaries. Giving your bees their own space means way less competition for all that nectar and a much lower risk of diseases jumping from one colony to another. It's such a simple step, but it can make a massive difference in your final yield.
Okay, so you've got the perfect spot picked out. Now we got to turn our attention to the real MVPs, your bees. A hive that's bursting with bees is a hive that's going to bring in the honey. So the question is, how do you get them into peak condition for the main event?
And this brings us to a huge strategic choice every beekeeper has to make right before the nectar really starts flowing. Are you going to merge your weaker colonies to create one absolute powerhouse of a hive? Or are you going to split your strongest ones to grow the number of colonies you have? This one decision really sets the stage for the whole season.
Let's break this down, because timing is everything here. If your goal is a monster honey harvest, then you'll want to merge your weaker hives right before the season kicks into high gear. This gives you one super colony with an army of forager bees ready to go. On the flip side, if you're trying to expand your apiary and get more hives, you have to split your strong colonies at least a month and a half before the season starts. That lead time is critical for the new colony to raise a queen and build up its own workforce.
Awesome. So, your bees are strong, they're in a great location. Now what? Well, now we have to be smart and actually guide their incredible work ethic. Let's talk about the tools of the trade that we can use to make sure they're putting all that honey exactly where we want it.
Let me introduce you to one of your absolute best friends in the apiary, the Queen Excluder. Seriously, this simple little grid is a total game changer. The queen bee is just a tiny bit bigger than the worker bees, so she can't fit through the slots. You place this right above the bottom brood box, and just like that, you've guaranteed that your upper boxes, your honey supers, are used for one thing and one thing only, storing pure, clean honey. No eggs, no larvae, just the good stuff.
Now, you've got to know, there isn't just one type of excluder. If you're working with a single box hive, you'd use a vertical excluder. It basically walls the queen off to just a few frames on one side. But for most folks using multi-box hives, the horizontal excluder is the way to go. It sits flat between the boxes and dedicates that entire top super just for honey. It's all about picking the right tool for your specific setup.
Okay, listen up, because this is a super important tip that can make a huge difference in your final harvest. As you get closer to the end of the nectar flow, you have to fight the urge to add new wax foundation sheets. Why? Think about it. It takes a ton of energy and nectar for bees to build out that new wax comb. That's honey they're consuming for construction instead of storing it for you.
All right, let's talk about the one thing that can derail a perfect season: swarming. A swarm is basically your worst nightmare during the honey flow. When they swarm, you lose half your workforce, and poof, there goes your potential honey harvest. Keeping that colony together and focused on the job is just paramount.
So how do you stop them from leaving? You've got to be on top of it, always one step ahead. That means regular inspections, especially when a hive starts getting really crowded. Sometimes an old queen is the trigger, so replacing her can give the colony a new sense of purpose. You also want to keep your bees compressed, which just means giving them the right amount of space, not too much, not too little. This really encourages them to fill and cap honey instead of thinking about moving out. And finally, keep scraping off any of that extra bird comb they build. It helps reduce that "we're too crowded" feeling that makes them want to swarm.
Now let's say you've decided you do need to replace a queen. Well, how you do it really depends on how much time you have left in your honey season. If you're in a short, intense flow that's less than 2 weeks, you need a new, mated queen who can start laying eggs immediately. Got a little more time? A virgin queen could work. And if you have a really long season, like a month and a half, you can actually let the hive raise its own new queen without really missing a beat on the harvest.
Okay, deep breath. We've done the prep, we've managed the hives, we've dodged the swarming bullet, and now it's the moment we have all been working for. It is harvest time. But getting this part right is about so much more than just yanking frames out of a box.
I cannot stress this enough. Your timing here is absolutely critical. The sweet spot is that final week before the nectar flow completely dries up. Trust me, if you wait too long, until after the flowers are all gone, those bees will become super defensive. You're going to have some very angry, protective bees on your hands, and the whole harvest becomes way more difficult than it needs to be.
Once you have those beautiful heavy frames of honey, the extraction part is actually a pretty simple 4-step process. First up, you take a special knife and carefully slice off those wax cappings. Then, you pop the frames into an extractor, which spins them around and slings the honey out. After that, you run the honey through a sieve or a cloth for an initial filtering to get the big wax bits out. And finally, you pour all that liquid gold into a settling tank to let it rest.
So, you've extracted all that honey. You might think you're done, but hold on. These last few steps are what will take your honey from just good to absolutely amazing, premium, crystal clear stuff. That final step we mentioned, settling the honey, you might be wondering, how long do I wait? Well, the magic number is right around 7 days. This resting period, sometimes called maturing the honey, is so important if you want that top quality, professional looking product.
And why a full week? What's happening during that time? Well, it's basically like a natural purification process. All the little microscopic bits, tiny air bubbles from the extractor, specks of pollen, fine wax particles, they all slowly float up to the top. After a week, they form this little layer that you can just skim right off, leaving you with nothing but perfectly pure, beautifully clear honey.
Look, if you take away only one thing about this whole extraction process, let it be this. You have to be clean. I'm talking sparkling clean. Every single tool, from your uncapping knife to your buckets to the settling tank, everything has to be properly washed and prepared. It is absolutely non-negotiable if you want to guarantee the quality of your honey.
And that's it. From picking the perfect spot all the way to jarring that crystal clear honey, you've done it. You navigated a successful honey season. Your harvest is in, the honey is maturing. But while your work might be done for now, what about your bees? For them, the work never really stops. Now begins the process of making sure they're fed and healthy for the winter, all to get ready for next year when the cycle begins all over again.